Hello, everyone, and welcome to 6 Feet Ahead. This is a podcast for funeral homes. Today's guest is Landon Bickley, VP of Customer Experience at Tukios, a leading software company for funeral homes. Starting in support, he found a passion for sales and customer relationships, helping over 900 funeral homes modernize their websites. Landon's all about creating raving fans through top-tier service, making Tukios a leader in customer satisfaction. He is a sought-after speaker on funeral home marketing and tech. He shares how digital tools drive growth and efficiency. So let's dive in. Welcome, Landon. It is a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, thank you, Oscar. It's great to be here.
Great.
I
Awesome.
didn't know I was going to get an intro too. That's excellent. I was like, wow, I'm getting an intro here. That's
Yeah,
great.
absolutely. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, you deserve it. I know that you really have some broad experience when it comes to working with funeral homes. So really, we want to dig into that. I've got some questions for you. Is it okay if we begin?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And
Okay,
I've got notes and stuff here too, so
awesome,
I've
awesome.
been looking at them. So,
How did you get involved in this industry?
oh man. So, yeah, my my uncle, so my whole family's from Southeast Idaho. My uncle is a general contractor and felt compelled to invest in a startup that was in the funeral space. It was like if you remember QR Remember, they'd put on the headstones, you'd scan it. It was like that, but the Google Lens technology. You would scan a headstone, you didn't have to deface it in any way, and it would bring up a video or a link to an obit. So you could walk around a cemetery and just like scan a headstone and boom, there's their video. There's their obituary. And it created a sort of like experiential type offering when you come into a cemetery, which I think was really cool. But the wheels are probably turning in your head saying, like, yeah, really cool in theory, so difficult in practice and like implementation. And which is, where a lot of businesses fail. And I was like so gung ho to like get involved in this business with him because ambition, right? I thought like, okay, this is going to be my opportunity for something. Who cares that it's in death care? Well, I was working for that company and they were failing so fast.
Ah,
And I was at a church, like call it like a fireside or someone was speaking, and a a girl that I knew came up to me and was like, "Hey, are you looking for a job?" And I was like, "No, I'm doing this like startup thing." And she said, "The company that I work in the office next to is hiring, but they do like funeral software. So like, don't be like weirded out by that." And I was like, "Oh no, like I'm not weirded out by that. I'm in the funeral space as well in the profession." And she's like, "Well, just call Curtis and uh and see if it works out." So I was in college at the time and I called him and he's like, "Well, we just need someone to answer phones from the hours of 3 to 6 p.m." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, man. Like I'll go take some phone calls." And I started off in just taking calls from Tukios customers. And I realized like how much people are passionate about the space and what they do,
oh yeah.
and how much they loved Tukios and like that create raving fans, like how that was kind of just like bleeding through everything we did. And I told him, I was like, "Hey, I need a sales internship for my degree." And he's like, "Well, do you just want to start calling funeral homes?" And so I started calling funeral homes, and that was almost 9 years ago, and then just kind of worked my way up, and now into customer experience. I'm over marketing, all of our account managers that reach out, and then any national accounts. I work with all the consolidators out there as well.
That's amazing, amazing story. I'm happy that you were able. It's amazing, really, how everything just fell into place, right? Like you
Yeah,
found, you're
yeah.
in the industry, you're obviously built for it, you have a great understanding of it, and it sounds like you're really in the right place. I think it's awesome, and I congratulate you on that.
No, thank you.
Um,
I'm blessed every day to be here. Like I thank God like that I'm here, and like great people. I think the future is bright for funeral service. It's going to change, right, Oscar? We're going to see some changes. Maybe some of them are painful,
Hmm.
but I think overall, people in this country are looking to this profession to lead them through still such a difficult time, and we've got to kind of recreate things ourselves to still prove up value. But I think in the end, everyone will realize the need that is there.
Okay. Okay. So you've helped over 900 funeral homes transition to new websites, right? So what are the biggest challenges that funeral home owners face when they're adopting newer tech, right? And how do you believe that they can overcome the hurdles that come along with this in order to actually grow their business?
It's funny when we talk about like what are the hurdles that are overcome. There's like hurdles on our side, and then there's hurdles on their side, and we almost have to form a partnership to say, all right, let's figure these out together. I can't tell you how many times I've heard I would be interested in doing this, but my staff, the lady that types our obituaries, my wife, my dad. I mean, it's like you call the funeral home, and the owner could be 70 years old, and he said, "Well, I've got to run this by my dad." And you're like, "Dad's got to be pushing 90 or so at this point." And but yet they're super worried about others and being able to adopt like technological changes. Whether it's an outdated process they want to improve upon, it could be a number of things, but it's just that resistance to change that we run into a lot. People feeling like, all right, I'm not going to be able to navigate this new world, and of course, we're not in a super techie industry, anyways, and so we find that a lot. Um, excuse me. We also run into the challenge of people just not owning their own digital real estate, and what we're talking about there is like domains. So when a funeral home, they might say, "Hey, I'd like to make a change. I want to do something here. I've had this website for like the last 20 years." But what they haven't done is they haven't secured that like smithfamilyfh.com domain. That might actually still be sitting in a GoDaddy account from the previous owner, or
Mm.
even sometimes their website provider has that. And what I'm talking about here is now they go to make a change and they can't actually do anything because they've got to then send their former website provider a request. And then now it's like this cat and mouse game of, oh, well, you don't actually want to leave. We're going to hold your domain hostage in order to
Mm.
get you to stay. I mean, if you think about it in terms of like physical property, just because funeral homeowners are very much like they own generally the land that their building stands on, to the digital world, it's just like you wanting to make some changes. You brought in a general contractor to build on this building or make some changes or even flatten it and start over again, and you don't have a key to the front door.
So I think, I mean, like from the sounds of it, there's a lot of things to learn from what you just said, but one of the main things that I take away, and I went through this actually with a funeral home owner. When the funeral home changes hands, it's important that they also get all these accesses, right? Because
Yep.
I see it personally with the Google
Facebook pages,
business
Google Business
profile.
Lit. Yep.
Yeah, all of that, the Facebook pages, all of that. Then there's a shuffle, and it's like, wait, who has access to this? How do we get access to it? Where do we go?
Emails, Oscar, like it's crazy. All of these digital assets, and there's talk in the tech space, right? When someone dies, what happens to their digital real estate, if you'll call it? Like all the movies that your mom purchased, do you own those now, or does that pass away with her? That sort of thing. And it's really the same thing. It's doing some sort of like a will and testament, if you will,
Mhm.
pun intended there, to to make sure that these things are secure when stuff does change hands, or if you want to make a change, because really they find themselves like handcuffed. I have a an example I'm thinking of. A few years ago, we came out with our website platform, and this guy wanted to change websites, and yet he could not find the domain. And I worked with him for probably a year and a half, and then he just said, "Yeah, screw it. We're not, we're not going to do
Wow.
anything." And I think about that guy, and I'm not gonna, bring up his name, but I almost want to
Right.
like check and see if his website's still the same because I bet that it is. What would have had to have happened is we would have had to just change the domain entirely and then tell the website provider currently to shut that site down. All that work that was put into building that brand just kind of goes down the drain. So the stakes are high there, and that's what we're running into. Um, as well, just like a lack of technical expertise on the part of someone who's doing it. It feels like a big change when they're wanting to implement anything new with software. I mean, we're in a service business, and they're a lot of people are good with their hands. They're good at speaking with people. It's good with talking to families. But when it comes to, man or woman at the desk behind the computer, that feels like a big deal. So I know at Tukios and a lot of other, even our competitors and others, it's like try and make something as simple as possible just so that people can feel like they can wrap their head around it and adopt it into their business.
Yeah, that makes complete sense, and I totally see how that's important. And like you said, the stakes are high here. So I think what happens is a lot of people don't realize or didn't realize years ago how important a website would become, how important their online presence would become. But now, as we see the decision makers of who's going to work, who's those people who are going to choose a funeral home next are generally Generation X right now. That's
Yeah.
what we're seeing. And Gen X is going online. They're Googling, they're searching for the funeral homes in their area, and they're interested in looking at their website, reading the reviews, looking at the reputation, understanding everything. I mean, one of the biggest fears that families have out there is getting ripped off or having a bad experience. So they want to
Yeah.
ensure that, and the best way for people in Gen X, for Gen Xers to actually protect themselves, is to research that information online. So we're completely aligned on that. I see that. I talk to funeral homeowners every day, and I see it over and over again. People are looking at their reviews, they're looking at their website, they want to know, what is this funeral home all about?
The same funeral director that might be complaining about the technological advancements or changes in their own industry are the ones that are going on to Amazon and expecting the package to be there within 3 hours to their front door. And so it's like trying to get people to connect the dots and say, hey, those same buying patterns and behaviors that you're involved in as a consumer today, it's the reason why you stopped going to your grocery store and you have Walmart Plus membership so that groceries come to your front door. Like those very same buying patterns, behaviors are what your families are now expecting of you. So like have some empathy or some understanding there as to like why you need to move forward. So like you asked in the question you sent me, like, what's your advice for overcoming them? And that's it. Like funeral directors are awesome at being empathetic to and sympathetic to what families are going through. And then it's just like take that a step further and now realize they want to interact with you in a little bit different way. They still want you a part of it, but let's just adjust that.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes complete sense. Thank you for that. Yeah. So you talk a lot about creating raving fans, right?
Raving fans. Yeah, that's like the guiding North Star here at Tukios.
Yeah, and I think that's a great guiding star for any business, right? You want to have raving fans. You want your customers to turn into fans. So for funeral homeowners, how do you feel that they can, I guess, leverage technology in order to transform that, satisfied client into a true advocate of their funeral home?
Yeah, when we look at like creating loyal customers or raving fans, as we call it here at Tukios, a couple things that go into that. It's like find ways to create value for free. And I know that might sound like, okay, this is a business, we've got to make money. It's like, yes, absolutely. That is the case. But there are certain things I think that a funeral home can do to create value again for free for their families. I think funeral homes are under leveraging their expertise in the community. There's a lot of things that they know and understand that I just don't think that are getting out there. We talked about like social media presence. and I think funeral homes could really just like release a video series in their community about just like, let's talk about from hospice all the way through the end. Like these are the things you should be aware of, and like let us walk you through this so that you can use this as like a step-by-step guide. And utilizing again technology to do that. Just getting on the computer and doing a little video series and then just sending that out to people as they're talking about pre-need conversations. It's like, hey, we talked about pre-need. I've also got just like a little one sheet I want you to download, or a video that's going to talk you through what's going to happen next with hospice and shutting down your mom's cell phone plans, and maybe talking to an estate attorney, those sorts of things. I think these are things of like, again, creating value for free. The next is like, I see funeral homes sometimes charging a family for an obituary, and that one blows my mind. I'll be honest, it's a real surprise for me, because when we look at like what's the purpose of an obituary, it is to get the information out there as far and wide as possible that someone has died. It's a notice, and that's one thing I think the newspapers were good at, that we're kind of getting away from, is that newspapers notified people who didn't know that someone had died. Because if you know someone has died, you're Googling and you're searching for them, right?
Hmm.
But a newspaper was just like, it put it out there, and people were going in the town and saying, "Oh, I didn't realize this person had died."
Mm.
And so, what I would like to see in an ideal world is funeral homes saying everyone gets an obituary, and we want to push that out as far as possible because we want the family to receive as much support as possible. Again, that's like creating value there for the family, because they're getting more friends and family to the service. They're getting messages of love. And even in some cases, like someone is transacting and doing something for the family. So creating value there. Um, I think that with technology, we can also, surprise and delight our customers. A lot of people talk about that with customer service, like find ways to surprise your customer base. And, and really, our websites aren't leveraged enough to do that. And what I mean by that is there's a great website in Australia. It's called Rite of Passage Funerals. Someone can check it out if they want to, and they can get a hold of me, and I can send them the right link. But what they did was they have this page where they're literally just saying, "Hey, here's all the awesome, crazy, unique, and fun things we've done at funerals. Wouldn't you like to do something like this for your family?"
Oh, wow,
And
that's great.
and I don't think the funeral home is saying like, "Hey, we're going to do it all. We need your help." But what they're doing is they're just letting the family know that it doesn't have to be like mom's funeral. We hear in focus groups all the time. NFDA does these they spend all this money to do these focus groups, and a number of companies do them as well. And someone says, "I just don't want the funeral that X had at the Catholic Church. We're religious or spiritual, but we don't want it at the church. We want to do something a little different." But they're kind of stuck, and so they're leaving now the funeral home to go to an event planner or to the country club to do these things. And we're saying to the funeral home, like, "Hey, you want to create a loyal customer? Like, help them plan and present them with cool and unique ideas that they can do and put into place, and just let them know like your space can be utilized for that. This might look like a house from the 1850s, which it is, but shoot, let's turn this thing into the biggest raving fan of the Cleveland Browns that this town has ever seen. Like, let's bring in all of their memorabilia, let's put it up." And I think that's when a family can then turn back and say to the funeral home, "Yeah, they created immense value for us, and we paid the same amount as the funeral home down the road, but they let us do exactly what we wanted." And the website can be a catalyst to that, and just showing and sending them a link and saying, "Hey, take a look at all these cool things that are out there that you can do."
Great ideas. Thanks for that. That's an awesome share. So there was a lot that you shared there that I think that people can really learn from, and funeral homes can actually leverage. One of the things that you mentioned is social media.
Yeah.
So, would you say then that having a strong online presence and using tools like social media or even SEO, because really, if you are turning those same tips, right? Like say you make a video series and you post it on social media, if you can turn those into some type of blog post and then you can share it out in a written way as well, Google will actually pick up on that. Would you say that that's a great way to connect with local families?
Absolutely. To speak to your point about like, is that important? The research that we've done and others have done to back this up, and there may be some discrepancy here. I'm not saying this is the gospel truth, but I don't feel like we're that far off. And you'll have to give me your opinion on this. Is that
Okay.
people are shopping 0 to 1 funeral homes. So let's think about that. If Mr. Mrs. Guerrero, your parents they pass away, and you're saying, all right, I'm gonna find a funeral home, and you're gonna shop 0 to 1 funeral homes. Well, that funeral home either better be right at the top of the Google business listing, that like what the 3 pack, like that better be
Yes.
the very first one, or it better be top of mind. Now, how do you get top of mind? Well, social media is a great way to do that. How do you get to that 0 to 1, or the one that they're going to shop? Maybe you're the first one and the reviews look great. So it's just like, yeah, you can't. Can we stress that enough to funeral homes, how important that is to be top of mind to to their communities?
Yeah.
Now, whether that's through SEO or social media, I think it's kind of a tandem approach. It's not just like this one thing, right? And maybe you would agree, maybe you wouldn't on that, but it's
Oh,
it's got to be multifaceted here.
yeah. I
And
agree 100%.
and so it's like, it's really easy when, like, I just put a new windshield on my car, and it was easy for me to shop around to 3 or 4 places because the stakes weren't that high. I wasn't really in a rush. But when you have mom who has just passed away or is close to passing, the the window for decision making is shrinking.
Yeah.
And so they've got to act quickly. They know there's a funeral home a half a mile down the road. They're going to call them, and maybe there's one 3/4 of a mile down the road, and maybe they're going to call them. But there could have been one a mile down the road with immense value that was better than the other two that they just didn't know about, frankly, because that funeral home just hasn't done a great job with community outreach, social media. Maybe their reviews are kind of not great, or they just don't have that many. I mean, we how many times do we look at a funeral home, a Google business listing, and they've got 10 reviews, all 5 stars. But it's like, oh, maybe they found 10 friends. There's
Yeah.
there's not as much legitimacy surrounding that business, when in reality, this is a great business. They just haven't invested the time to improving that.
Yeah. And then what I tell funeral homes too is that they have to look in their area and see, what are the, how, where do they rank, right? When it comes to those reviews, do they have um, like you mentioned, 10 reviews with 5 stars, and then they have another funeral home that they're competing with that has 170 reviews with 4.9 stars. 4.9 stars and 170 reviews makes it seem like they've been around longer, they have more experience, and
Yep.
that those reviews
All
are
of those
real.
things. All
You
of
know,
those things, right?
yeah, so I think that that makes a ton of sense, and also, taking a holistic approach to this is important. So, you want to be on social media, you want to be at the top of Google, you want to be in the map pack, you want to have all of these things going on, you want to have great reviews, and on top of that, you also need the offline aspect as well. You know, um community outreach, talk to the hospice, create a relationship with them there. When a person refers you, there's always, it could be the person at hospice says, "Hey, check out this funeral home," and then family goes, and they might Google them just to check them out, just to check out the reviews, right? And they don't have a presence. Again, there's an opportunity there for another funeral home to come away and take that business away from them.
Yep.
So yeah, I totally agree with you and totally see that.
The hospice, and like the hospice nurse or whoever the provider is there,
Mhm.
the families are really looking to them to like guide them. And even
Yes.
even in, even in the case of my own family, the hospice nurse was kind of like, you go to funerals and you hear a lot like, we want to thank the people who provided end of life care for my mom or dad. You hear that a lot. And so families are really counting and trusting in these people's opinions. And so you mentioned like developing a relationship with hospice. I think that's paramount. Christine Hunsaker and her brother Robert Hunsaker. I remember Christine did a presentation for us at the Utah Funeral Directors Association, and she talked about how her and her brother leveraged hospice to just as a pipeline to get people into their funeral home. Because I mean, hospice is generally, my experience is very cost conscious. They're just saying like to the family, like, this is the cheapest option, because they
Hmm.
might think funeral homes are overpriced. They're not seeing the value there. So it's like educating and being top of mind for them as well, I think is just as important as for the families.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, let's talk a little bit about tech, since this is what Tukios,
Now we're
does.
getting into it. Now we're
Yeah,
getting into it. Yeah.
yeah. So I would love to know a little bit more about tech. When we think about tech, in terms of marketing, but we can also think of it in terms of day-to-day operations and efficiency, right? And efficiency, I feel like in funeral homes is really of paramount importance, because especially when we're talking to those owner operators, they're just overwhelmed, right?
Yeah.
In your experience, what areas of a funeral home's operations can really benefit from these technological upgrades?
Oh man, that's a loaded one. One of the first areas I'm still surprised when we talk to funeral homes who aren't using a case management software. For those that are outside of the industry, kind of like a CRM, right?
Hmm.
Uh, a HubSpot or a Salesforce, but a business software that's highly specialized to creating contracts, running their day-to-day operations. It could be into the financials, whatever that might be. And price aside, the value is immense and it is there. I mean, folks like Passari, uh, Osiris Halcyon, they've invested immense resources into making, and I like our competitors, they have TMS. There's a myriad of other systems. Continental has a system that's great as well. And these are softwares that I think can really help. But again, it's like when we go back to that, what are common obstacles they face? It's, yeah, we have this form we fill out, and we have also an Excel spreadsheet. And I just don't think my staff will adopt anything new. A massive, massive opportunity missed, in my opinion, to streamline things. And when we talked about the other day, you and I, like a virtual assistant being a possibility. And in this case, it's like, all right, why not apply that into here? Um, more on that topic, I think there's a lot of great like cemetery mapping that isn't being utilized as well. I mean, who doesn't want to go to the cemetery and just type in where someone is? Or like Cemetery 360 has this awesome like Zillow for properties, where online you can get on there and just pick out your cemetery plot basically. I mean, it's just like house hunting. Basically get a 360 view and say, yeah, I really like that poplar tree right there, and my neighbor's got a stone bench. Like, this is where I'm going to put down roots. I think those
Yeah.
things are cool, and opportunities for the funeral homes or combo locations to step into the 21st century more fully and provide consumers with the things that they're used to getting on other websites.
So,
As well, one last one,
mhm.
I think there's a missed opportunity when we're talking about just like operations and day to day with some of these casket providers or online urn providers. Like UPD Urns has a great online e-commerce selection. So if someone isn't utilizing them to purchase an urn, most likely they're going to Etsy, Amazon, wherever. Well, UPD Urns is saying, let's give them a store that they can take home and shop from their couch. They don't have to buy in our showroom. They can do it from their couch as well, or from their cell phone. And I see a lot of websites that just don't have their merchandise online. And that could be a limitation of the supplier or the vendor. Like we work with suppliers and vendors all the time to say, hey, we've got to get these catalogs online, because I think you're doing yourselves a disservice and it's affecting the operation operational efficiencies day to day of the funeral homes. They can't get online with a family and show them like what the casket is, or send it to them previously to them coming into the funeral home. So the family's coming in and just saying, what's the cheapest option? My grandparents are a great example of this. Like they were so committed to buying a pine box, like my grandfather. And I was just like, Grandpa. And we did his pre-planning with Linquist here locally. I finally got him to sit down and like, let's do this. I'm in the space. Like, let's get your plans in place. I think it'd be a good thing. And so we sit down and he's like, I want to be buried in a pine box. And the pre-planning agent, Jason, was awesome. He just starts laughing. And I think that was like a great approach. Like he injected humor into it. He just starts laughing. He's like, I hear you, man. Like that's kind of what most people want. And then something changed when we were able to show them what caskets are going to look like and get them into a place where they're like looking through it. And my grandpa's like, yeah, I actually think I'd like that wood one. It was like a $4,000 or $5,000 casket. And I'm just like, through some sales enablement tools, he now spent, instead of a standard 18 gauge casket, is now buying a $4,000 or $5,000 casket. Like that's crazy to me, right? And we see funeral homes that just aren't leveraging those things every day. They're still using like a catalog to do that. And it's like, hey, if you can't make it happen, press on your supplier that they have got to invest in the technology.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I mean, I think I mean, yeah, we're behind, but we're pushing forward to get there. The advantages to doing it are definitely there. I mean, it would make any sense not to, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
That
And
makes
we haven't even talked about like websites or tribute video software. I mean, just like quickly there, because everyone knows, we're biased, but when we see websites with folks that they look like they were built in the early 2000s, that's exactly what families are thinking. This is the funeral home that's got the really dark carpet. It's musty in there. Maybe it's stinky. It's scary. All those buzzwords.
Oh,
Looking
yeah.
at an old, dark, dingy website is like what's going through their head.
I love the picture that you just painted, because you painted it perfectly in my head right now when you mentioned that. And yeah, that's so great. I actually just yesterday I was talking with a funeral home, and I told them, I said, listen, we need updated pictures.
Yeah. Yep.
And they told me, they said, I don't think pictures are going to bring me more families. And I told them, I was like, believe me, like they will. And when they sent me the pictures, like my jaw dropped at how beautiful the funeral home is. But nobody would know, because they're
Nobody
using
would
these old pictures, you
nobody would
know?
know. Let me tell you a quick story. So we have a client in the Northeast, small town funeral home. It's the story you've probably heard hundreds of times. Small town funeral home, dark, dingy, terrible photos. Probably were taken by the previous owner or manager from their Nokia flip phone in the early 2000s. Sure, right? And I told them, like, let us source you a photographer and let them come in and watch your business transform online. I got on Yelp, and I'm not even from the area, so like this can be done, replicated by anyone else. So like I like how you approach funeral marketing, where you're like, you can do some DIY things. So like this is a DIY tip. Like go on Yelp, and you're literally looking for a real estate photographer, someone that's comfortable photographing real estate. Like buy sell ads for homes. They're doing Airbnbs, and I sent them messages, and I was like, hey, I've got a funeral home that I need you to photograph. Are you good with that? All of them, it was like a resounding yes, absolutely. You feel totally comfortable with that. I can make it look great. And I was like really surprised how eager they were. And then I thought about it, and I'm like, of course they're eager. Like they're looking for business. These are solopreneurs, or what they call them, entrepreneurs that are looking to grow their business. They want to make this look good. I sourced a guy for around $500. He went out, took pictures of both locations. I said, do you do headshots? And he's like, oh yeah, I know it's not listed, but of course I can do that. Well, let's get some headshots of the staff as well, because those are the second most visited pages on the website. Who am I working with? He went out there, he took pictures. Their website looks incredible, not because of what Tukios has done, but literally just from like some good photos. We got rid of the stock photos of the family sitting in the meadow that people know as stock photos. And one of the owners of the funeral home said, "I've never seen the funeral home look this good." Like people are going to be, I'm worried they're going to like come in and say it looks better online. I'm like, I think there's some level of that is okay.
Yeah.
Like, so anyways, it can be done. And if they're willing to invest a little bit of time, $500 to $700, and that was in a more expensive area, probably could be able to get it done maybe a little bit cheaper.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I do something um almost identical to that. The only thing is I found a new service. You might want to check it out. It's called Snapper. It's
Oh,
SNAPPR, and it's just for photography. And it's these same guys, right? The same guys who are on Yelp, but they're all on
perfect.
Snapper. And you post the job there and they pick it up. Because I had like for example, we're working with I'm based out of Miami, and we obviously work with funeral homes around the whole country. And then I had a funeral home in Pennsylvania. They were in Philadelphia, and they asked me, they're like, "So you have a photographer that's going to fly all the way here to take pictures?" I was like, "No."
No, there's perfectly capable photographers in Philly.
Yeah, yeah, and I know, and they're not hard to find. So, yeah, and they'll do an awesome job. So, yeah, we're definitely aligned with that. That's exactly how I would tackle it. That's exactly how we are tackling it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and these are things that funeral homes can do on their own. It's not, you don't have to contract out an agency just to get pictures. You know?
I mean, how many I'm thinking like how many thousand call firms have I seen that like the imagery is so bad?
Mm,
And I just like oh, rub my forehead. I'm like, oh man, like we've got to do some work here. You've got beautiful facilities. Your staff's not scary. Like, let's showcase that because right now people think the opposite.
yeah, yeah, totally, totally. And what you mentioned earlier, as far as like operations are concerned, and like introducing technology into a funeral home, and then having a funeral director say, "Well, I don't know if the staff's really going to take on this." That there's a problem with that on many levels, and
Yeah.
I think that one of the things that has to be introduced as like some type of SOP, some standard operating procedure in the funeral home that you say, okay, this is how we do things. Follow these directions, follow these instructions, and that way, even if that person for whatever reason leaves, you always have a guide there that someone else can
Yeah.
come in and pick up. I mean, but these things are missing. These
Yeah.
things they really are.
I
Um,
heard a pre-need agency talking one time. They're like they had a guy near the border of Canada or just over the border, and he was doing like a close to 1 million in sales a year, which was a astronomical number. They said the problem is no one can replicate it because his process is so unique and so archaic. And I got thinking about that with like sales reps and tech and all these things like standard operating procedures, like putting these in place so that anyone can step into that position and be successful based upon the things that are set up. That it's
yeah.
like, we've got the tech in place to where you're sitting down with a family and it's going to walk you through step by step. Like, let's bring it up on the screen and say, hey, what casket would you like? And they're like, they find themselves all of a sudden becoming a better sales agent or a sales rep with families because technology is enabling them to do so. It's not an awkward conversation. They're not having to like paint this sophisticated visual representation of what this thing's going to look like. It's just like they can just sit back and with a few clicks show the family what it's.
That's awesome. So, as I mentioned earlier, we know that families are becoming more tech savvy. They're searching for funeral homes online. How do you feel that funeral homeowners can adapt to those needs? So, like, I'll give you a quick example, right?
Yeah.
There are people out there who want quick communication, and it may not necessarily be a phone call. Actually, I personally believe, just from experience, of working and communicating with younger generations, that a lot of them don't like to make the phone call. They like to communicate
Text.
via text. Yes. So we're talking about like quick, like texts or forms, emails, you know, what changes should a funeral home consider in order to actually meet that type of demand?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things here. You mentioned just their lack of wanting to make a phone call. Like we've built out chatbots, both with AI and just some other semi-sophisticated kind of talk tracks that the system takes them through that can do that, or just connecting them into a virtual agent. Now, I think some of the answering service providers in the space are getting much better at this, where they're also realizing this and saying, all right, we've got to present different and more adapted to a younger generation ways of how they want to communicate. And texting is one. I really like these aftercare programs that have come out, that they've got a series of messages that come out. Aftercare.com does one. Alivia, they rebranded, I think, from Demonicare to do that. And it's like communicating with the family, sending them messages, and then allowing the family to just communicate back. And that they're finding these conversations that are developing into sales, developing into the family feeling like they got greater value out of the funeral home, that they care, they're following up with them, making sure they're doing okay. It just wasn't a transaction that transpired over a week or a weekend, that it has continued on. And so I think it's encouraging funeral homes to be open to those types of things and saying, hey, you might be very interested in everyone calling you. That may not be the case.
Yeah.
And if you're wondering about that, talk to your grandchildren or just observe them. Like, just say, hey, I want you to walk me through what you would do to buy a car. Or if you had to make a big purchase, like what would you do? And how would you want to communicate with them? Because I know, like, I've developed this thing where I want to try everything I can to not go into a car dealership ever again,
Hmm.
because of like some negative experiences I've had. So
Hmm.
I think Tesla, love them or hate them, has developed an excellent funnel and way to convert and sell, and just from the top to the bottom. And you show up there and you sign like a couple documents and you're leaving, and you're saying, wow, I didn't have to talk to a sales rep. How nice was that? So it's like
Yeah.
encouraging funeral homes to think on that and say, hey, let's take this a step further. People get frustrated when they deal with a car dealership and they don't know what the price is going to be, the real price. Oscar, you hear that a lot in this space. Like, we don't know what the actual price of this funeral is going to be. And I hear funeral homes say, I don't want to post my pricing online because then my competitor will find it. Well, guess what? I think they already have it,
Yeah. It
because
shouldn't be a secret.
they already have it because they've asked other people what they're charging. People have brought in quotes to them that they will match. A lot of funeral homes do that. So it's like they've seen your pricing probably this year. If they haven't seen it this year, they saw it last year or the year before, and chances are it's not that much different.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, I was going to say, at the end of the day, I don't, because I've had, running a marketing agency, I've had funeral homes ask me, like, do you offer any kind of protection, like area wise? And I tell them
Yeah.
no, because every funeral home is different, and you're not competing based on price. You're competing based on who you are and the services that you offer.
And value.
The
Yeah.
value, exactly.
And they're buying you as a person as much
Hmm.
as anything too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and And so, like, we actually developed an online arranger tool. Parting Pro has them. There's a number of companies that have these now, but it's just like a dynamic pricing tool that someone can get online. They can say, I would like to be cremated, but I would also like to think about having a service, or some sort of final goodbye. I want an urn. I want these types of things, and actually getting accurate price quote. And then from there on out, they can choose to save that. They can export that to the funeral home. One thing that we've told funeral homes is, hey, when someone calls you with a hey, we need to come have you come grab mom or pick up mom. Like they don't really know the verbiage. Like even I'm struggling with that verbiage. Like, what do you say? Like,
Yeah.
my mom has passed. I need you to come get her.
Mm-hmm.
They can then say, okay, well, here at Shoals Cremation, we've got a tool online that's just going to allow you to pick some packaging. Now, you don't have to transact or swipe your credit card there, but I just want you to be aware of all that we offer. And then you can start filling in some vital statistics there. Now, if this is like a pre-need scenario or something like that, the last thing we want is for someone to get form fatigue, we call it. And it's just making their forms very short, very simple, just capturing what the person is interested in and the minimum amount of contact info just so you can get in touch with them. And then taking that, putting them into a drip campaign, whatever, you're the pro at that, helping them with that side of things. That's why, like, I see immense value in a marketing firm, especially for, firms that hit that like 150 to, and up. From there, underneath that, sometimes the smaller town firms get a little concerned, like, well, everyone's coming here anyways. And it's like, well, that may not be the case in the future. So you should still invest in this, but maybe finance is an issue. But if we're talking about that 150 and up call firm, it's like capture these leads and then nurture them and have the marketing groups help you to do that. So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You've mentioned a few pieces of tech that Tukios offers. Like you've mentioned like some form of chat bots,
yeah,
chat,
yeah,
I know like a chat widget. You also you mentioned the what you just mentioned, which is like
we
how
call it
to
the online arranger tool.
online arrangement. Like
Yeah.
are all these available like at a fee? How does that work?
Yeah, so Tukios, and I don't want this to be like shameless self promotion either, but we have a few little add on items. Obviously, the websites are free. With the funeral home gets the lion's share of the commissions, and then we have a few other things that it's just like, hey, if you want to pay to have those on your site, you can. But even just a GPL that is organized and put on there in an easily digestible format, we don't
Mhm.
charge a dime for that. So it just depends on how interactive they want it to be. And for cremation providers, it seems like they're very much interested in it being very interactive, which is really interesting to me.
Yes.
That a full service funeral home would not be the ones that say we want the Cadillac of experience. We want this to be as interactive as possible. In fact, it's the low cost cremation providers, because I think it's so competitive, that are saying we want this to be as easy as possible and as interactive. And so yeah, a few
Hmm.
charges there, but like we offer our lead engine capabilities, which is the ability to capture leads and run ads on their site and market to people, which we partner with marketing companies to have them come in there and manage those things. But to just do all that, and use that, if they want to DIY it completely themselves, it's free. We
Okay.
want their businesses to be around in 20 years. Who cares if you sell flowers on your website if the business is not thriving?
Yeah, yeah. Or if they're not
I
going
mean, right? Like
to,
that's
yeah,
why, that's why we're in business. That's why you're in business. We want to secure their business for future generations, for whatever the succession planning is. If it's them selling in 10 years and making a lot of money, that's awesome. We're glad that Tukios is a part of that. Or if it's whatever the goals are, we, to support that.
Let's talk a little bit about the future. Um, now that that was a perfect segue to
Segue
this.
into that.
Yeah. What about the future? Like there's so much changing, right?
Yeah.
There's just so much
AI, I feel
yeah,
like we've lived 15 years in the last like 2 years, right?
absolutely. And some of the stuff that I've seen is just, I don't know, it's left me a little bit, I don't know if it's in shock or kind of just like really, really leads you down a rabbit hole of pondering ethics and even like psychological um consequences of certain things. Like when you talk about AI, I've
Yeah, let's
seen,
talk about that. There's some examples there.
yeah, like I saw one that was, I really like freaked me out. And it was like create an avatar of a person that is
Yeah.
passing away, feed it as much data as you can about the person. And once a person passes away, you can still carry conversations with them. And that
And
was like,
and
wow.
our, the listeners could try this. They could go on to just chat GPT, and they could, celebrities is a great one. Even like scriptural prophets, you could say, because we have the teachings of Jesus, you can say, hey, chat GPT, I want you to pretend like you're Jesus. And there's enough information out there on the internet of his writings, his teachings, to where someone can communicate with him as if he was present in front of us today. Now, that same thing can be done for a family member who has passed away. And that, you take it a step further, feeding in the voice of the
Yeah.
individual. And you don't need that much of an audio sample to now create, again, then you talk about the avatar, and you feed in their writings, maybe it's videos.
Yeah.
You are kind of feeding the learning model and saying, this is how this person was. Now, no, let's adjust that. They were a little softer on the delivery. And what does that do to grief, Oscar, if you're not able to let someone go?
Yeah. This is exactly where my mind was going.
We have,
Yeah.
think about it. Like, we have confronted that, because on obituaries, how lifelike do you make this obituary and this landing place, this gathering place, to where then people are really struggling to just like have that final goodbye and acceptance? Like, if we start doing these things, can we be messing with that process? And we've had to confront that here at Tukios, because we're at the forefront of that. There's
That
no better place for something like that to live than on the obituary, right? I mean, where
yes.
else would that live in a more effective place? Maybe on some social media site, but really it's the obituary. Someone could go on there, hey, have a chat with grandpa.
Wow.
So
So
that's kind of some concerns we have. There's also some exciting things. And go ahead. You
that's
asked.
what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you about the exciting things.
Yeah. One thing that we have committed to, and a lot of others have committed to, is just this, using AI as sort of an assistant to make your business better.
Hmm.
One of the things we've done is coming up with like AI generated obits, or an obit engine. And others have done this. We're not unique to this, but we like to think we are, right? We all do, but others have taken a crack at it too. What we have found is longer and better written obits increase engagement, sales, visits, literally everything. So just by character count alone, people are staying longer. Now you add a video onto that, they're staying more minutes. They're engaging more, they're leaving more comments, they're buying more flowers, gifts, everything. It's just like, it's crazy that the more time that the funeral home has spent actually crafting a gathering place, people are saying, thank you for that. Let's take it a step further now, and let's increase everything about this. And I had one funeral director tell me, like, yeah, funeral directors really suck at writing obits. And that was a little harsh, maybe, because I think there are some that are good out there, but it's giving them tools that just make their life a little bit easier, to where you could sit down with a family and say, hey, here at Guerrero Funeral Home, everyone gets an obit. Let's just talk about your dad. Tell me in 5 minutes who your dad was. And they're just talking to you. Maybe you're typing, or maybe it's just recording their voice and tossing it into a doc. And then you're just taking that and saying, hey, let's write an obit for dad based on all this information. Now imagine you hand that to the family as a starting point, and they're looking at you saying, this is perfectly accurate. It takes away the difficulty of just like, he is survived by such and such. I don't know how to write that. I don't know how to like make it flow like it's a story, the story arc of it. But AI does, and has
Mhm.
had the ability to read millions of obits and learn kind of that structure and that format. But it took you no longer. In fact, it took you less time than handing that information to your assistant and saying, hey, I know you're good at writing obits. Make sure this one's really good. So that's cool. That's cool on the obit front. Also with photos, we're seeing like the ability to do image upscaling. I hear all the time, the only photo the family had was a driver's license photo. Like, can you even like comprehend that? I mean, like, for everyone out there, like, can we comprehend that that you'd have someone pass away that you cared about, and maybe the only thing that you have to remember them by is that driver's license photo. Well, imagine now we can take that photo, we can use AI to upscale it to enhance it, and now you can print that off as an 8x10 photo that's actually visible, that you can be displayed in your home. That might be the most valuable keepsake that they walk away from your funeral home, is that image right there. And so as technology providers, I think it's important that we commit to things like that are going to enhance someone's service value. They're coming away saying, yeah, thank you. This was great. You spent the most time embalming, but there was these other little touches that made it worthwhile. Like with videos, when we talk about that, those are very much undersold in a lot of ways. I hear of funeral homes, they take the family aside and they let them do like a private viewing of the body, and then they also display the video. And they're like, the body's over here, and yet they're over in the corner with their arms around each other sobbing because the video was so beautiful. And I think for a lot of funeral homes, that's like starting to connect, where it's just like there's so much power in the digital media that is left
Yes.
behind, and putting that into a digestible format that's viewable, and that is just like organized, and it's got that story arc, and it's set to music that they loved, and whatever it might be. So those are the things that we're committing to, is just like, all right, let's make that easier, make it faster, make it more shareable. We're looking at like, let's take these videos and make them sort of TikTok format, where it just like shows off the person's life in 20 seconds, that can then be shared on TikTok, shared on Facebook. The funeral home can then say, this is a big service. It's worth us boosting this. It's worth us throwing some money behind it to get that out into the community further. And that's really, I think, the positive things in the future, is just highlighting people in a better way.
Oh, absolutely. I love it, man. That's awesome. So I think that, obviously we're doing this interview because we feel that Tukios has just a ton to offer. Um, so what do you feel for those funeral homes that are new to Tukios, they haven't heard of it before, or they have, but they never took that step and they want to take the next step? What would be the best way to take that next step with you guys?
Well, we seem to run into them quite often at trade shows. So look for the people in the obnoxiously green shirts. Sometimes we're out on the dance floor, or giving away hats and whatnot. So they can check us out there at the trade shows. Our social media, we believe, is the most fun. We really try and inject humor into a lot that we do. Fun makes work better. That's also like a core value here at Tukios. And we try and extend that to the industry, because there's just not enough fun in funeral service. And so check us out on social media, tukios.com, obviously. I'm Landon Bickley. You can catch me at landon@tukios.com as well. Anyone's welcome to email me. And even, our CEO, Curtis at tukios.com, like he's always super willing to talk to a customer. It's one thing I love about working with him, is he never shies away from getting on a sales call or talking to a customer who's interested in just hearing our story and what makes us different. So from the top to the bottom, we're committed to that. So did that answer your question right there?
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. I think this was a great conversation, and I want to thank you, for your time, and I want to thank you for all the value that you brought. Um, and again, we wish you the absolute best, both to you and to Tukios.
Thank you, Oscar. It's great being here.
All right.